Okay, support for the impeachment and removal of Donald Trump has exploded, and support for the impeachment inquiry has nearly tripled, even among Republicans over the last couple of weeks. This is not good news for Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been touting these cartoonishly high approval ratings from Republicans. Sometimes Trump will tweet, Republican 95% support. Thank you. And maybe that's true in some poll. I mean, I haven't seen it. Maybe Rasmussen has Trump at 95% approval among Republicans. That's not the data that I've been seeing. Most of the polls I've looked at have Trump's Republican approval somewhere between the high 70s and around 80. And what that means is that there are 1 out of 5 Republicans that do not approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing. This gets us to more specifically assessing support for the impeachment of the president. In the first week, that week between the start of the Ukraine fiasco going public and a few days after the impeachment inquiry was announced, support for impeaching and removing Trump went from 36% to 43%. That was an increase of about 20%. Another week has gone by, and support has increased even more. The questions in this latest data are a little bit different, but most importantly, support for the impeachment inquiry has exploded among all Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and it is growing in parallel across party lines. This is very important, and it's important because Donald Trump needs that Republican electorate to win re-election in 2020. So first, 49% in a Washington Post Schar School poll want the House to call for the removal of Donald Trump. 49% of Americans. 58% of Americans say that the impeachment inquiry is correct, that it is the right thing to do. But maybe the single most notable number to come out of this new poll is that the move towards impeachment has happened across party lines. Democratic support for the inquiry is up 25 points. Independent support for the inquiry is up 20 points. And Republican support for the inquiry is up 21 points. 30% of Republicans now support the impeachment inquiry that Democrats are trying to carry out. But does this matter, right? I mean, why do we care in the end if 3 out of 10 Republicans support the inquiry? Because a Republican Senate is very unlikely to vote to convict. The reason we care is that the whole point of this is to get people not to vote for Trump in 2020. And I'm using very precise language there. Now, I know that there are some people in my audience holding out hope that the impeachment inquiry could lead to Donald Trump's removal because Republicans in the Senate will vote to convict. I see it as incredibly unlikely, but anything is possible. The much more realistic outcome is that the success of the impeachment inquiry depends on influencing public opinion. When we look at public opinion, you see that in 2 weeks, Republican support for the impeachment inquiry has effectively tripled from around 10%, 11, 12 maybe it was, to 30%. This does not bode well for Donald Trump. Now, a reasonably skeptical observer of this would ask the question, if you're a Republican and you support the inquiry, does that mean you're going to vote for a Democrat in November of 2020? And that's a very good question to ask. And the answer is, of course not. You are not necessarily or even likely to vote for a Democrat in November of 2020 if you are a Republican who merely thinks that the inquiry is warranted. But you might stay home. And that alone could be good enough to pull Trump out of the White House, assuming that we on the left get our base out as well. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen Republican impeachment inquiry support triple. We have seen triple, 3. We've seen prominent Republicans start to turn on Trump. We've seen loony Lindsey Graham and Moscow Mitch McConnell, albeit not over the Ukraine stuff, but over the Syria stuff, start to sort of part ways with Donald Trump to some degree. We are seeing the right-wing media like Fox News embroiled in what I described earlier this week or last week as an internal cannibalistic battle over whether or not they will be on the Trump train in 2020. And meanwhile, Trump has gone out after courting Ukraine in a private phone call and courted the Chinese for political dirt on Joe Biden. after the impeachment inquiry was launched. Just imagine, when you look at what has taken place over the last 2 weeks, just imagine what could happen between today and the next Democratic debate, which is in a week. Unprecedented circumstances. Donald Trump drawing a line in the sand, saying he will not participate in the impeachment inquiry, whose support has now tripled among Republicans. Stunning stuff. I want to hear from you. What do you think is going to be the next shoe to drop? Make sure you are commenting if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure to send me a tweet on Twitter at @DPakman. And while you're there, follow the David Pakman Show on Twitter at David Pakman Show. We'll take a quick break and be back right after this. I am thrilled to tell you that today's episode is sponsored in part by Blinkist.com/Pakman. Blinkist is a really unique service for your phone, tablet, and web browser, and it is incredibly useful for people like me who love books and learning but are busy. Blinkist takes the best and most popular nonfiction books and condenses them into 15-minute audiobooks. I'm sure that if you're like me, you have a very long list of books that you've been meaning to read. You only have so many hours in the day, and that's why Blinkist is so amazing. They take the most important information, the themes, the insights from each book, and they distill it into a 15-minute audiobook that you can listen to in one sitting. I've listened to a ton of books on Blinkist. Our audience can get a 7-day free trial by going to Blinkist.com/Pakman. If you're watching on YouTube, I put a link in the description. I have listened to Blinkist books about economics, about political science, about history, about science, so many interesting things. And after the free trial, if you like it, you can continue enjoying thousands of condensed audiobooks for about $5 a month. Go to Blinkist.com/Pakman. That's BLINKIST.com/PAKMAN.